Welcome back to part 5 in our video series on the prequel characters from A Song of Ice and Fire. This video explores the costumes and physical descriptions of the book characters not seen in the show. And if you missed our previous videos, including our latest one, the women's prequel costumes, I'll leave it below in the description. To stir your imagination, we have sought out some amazing conceptual artwork from the world of Ice and Fire, along with some stunning concept illustrations, fan art, cosplays, and couture fashions. You'll find links to over 100 artist pages in the pinned comment below. To bring this series to light are co-producers Tatiana Melendez and Vanessa Amnesty. Vanessa has been a longtime viewer and is a Song of Ice and Fire book aficionado and a costume lover. And of course you will know Tatiana as one of the trio from my Game of Queens panel. And you can learn more about both of them in the description below. The information in this video comes from a variety of sources, including Elio and Linda's The World of Ice and Fire, The Untold History of Westeros and the Game of Thrones, which throughout the video I will refer to as the World Book. And while we strive for accuracy, we may occasionally get something wrong, and as a reminder, you don't have to be a book reader to enjoy the ride. Now let's get started. Arianne Martell. Princess Arianne Nymeros Martell, better known simply as Arianne Martell, is a member of House Martell and is the eldest daughter of DORNE Martell, the ruling Prince of Dorne, and his consort Lady Mellaria of the Free City of Narvos. According to Rhoynish customs and Dornish laws, as stated in A Feast for Crows, Arianne is the heiress of Sunspear and the future ruling princess of Dorne. In The Winds of Winter as a young girl, Arianne was described as pudgy and flat-chested, and she would pray to the Seven Nightly, hoping that she would be given beauty when she was older. As children, Jeyne was Arianne's best friend, since they were both the same age, and according to the World Book, she was half in love with her uncle, Prince Oberyn. In A Feast for Crows, Arianne is said to be a woman in her early 20s, described as buxom and beautiful, with olive skin, large dark eyes, and long thick black hair that falls in ringlets to the middle of her back. She has full lips, a husky voice, and round ripe breasts. Favoring her mother Mellaria, Arianne is short, standing at 5'2". Arianne is also calculating, adventurous, and fierce-tempered. When she sees something she desires, she strives to obtain it at all costs. She does not shy away from using her looks to get what she wants, nor from seducing men to get them to do her bidding, occasionally granting sexual favors in this context. According to the World Book, Arianne conceals her lush and curvaceous body with flowing silks, jewels, and other ostentatious displays of wealth. Instead of having his daughter rule Dorne, as was her birthright, in a secret marriage pact, Prince Doran has arranged that his daughter be betrothed to the exiled Viserys Targaryen. This was part of a plan to return the Targaryens to the Iron Throne, something that Doran had only intended to keep from Arianne until she came of age at 16. It all ends up being quite the comedy of errors, as Viserys dies, but Doran never reveals his plans to Arianne until after an attempted coup to crown Princess Myranda Baratheon and displace her father as Prince of Dorne. This is all with the aid of her lover Sir Aerys Oakheart. Her plot is foiled, however, and she is isolated within the Spear Tower for several weeks by her father Doran. Quentyn Martell. Prince Quentyn Nymeros Martell, better known simply as Quentyn Martell, is a knight from House Martell. He is the second child and eldest son of Doran Martell, Prince of Dorne, and Lady Mellaria of Narvos. He is also the younger brother of Arianne Martell. Quentyn has been groomed by his father, Doran Martell, to become the successor to Dorne. Quentyn is described in A Dance with Dragons as having brown hair, brown eyes, and stubble on his cheeks. He has a high forehead, broad nose, and square jaw, and he does not smile easily. Quentyn, however, is sensible and dutiful, but solemn and not handsome. Sir Barristan Selmy's thoughts on the boy are that one is his father's son, short and stocky, plain-faced. He seemed a decent lad, sober, sensible, dutiful, but not the sort to make a young girl's heart beat faster. In A Dance with Dragons, it says that Quentyn has been riding horses since he was 6 and has been trained with spear and sword and shield since he was old enough to walk. In A Feast for Crows, Quentyn has crossed the Narrow Sea in secret in an attempt to reach Daenerys Targaryen in Meereen with his 2 companions, Sir Garrus and Sir Archibald. Presenting himself to Queen Daenerys Targaryen in her audience chamber, and with the death of Viserys, Quentyn offers his hand in marriage in return for the support of Dorne. Daenerys, however, refuses him as she is already betrothed to Hizdahr zo Loraq. In an act of folly in his plans to tame at least one of Daenerys' dragons due to his Targaryen ancestry, Quentyn is nearly cooked to death by Rhaegal's dragonfire. Missandei takes care of Quentyn, but he dies in Daenerys' bed 3 days later, covered in burns. Gerold Dayne. Sir Gerold Dayne, also known as Darkstar, is the Knight of High Hermitage. His house is a cadet branch of the Danes of Starfall. According to the World Book, Gerold is in his late 20s. He is described in A Feast for Crows as a handsome man with a clean-shaven face, an aquiline nose, high cheekbones, dark purple eyes, and a strong jaw. He has collar-length, thick silver hair divided by a streak of midnight black. Arianne thinks if there was a handsomer man in Dorne, she did not know him. According to the World Book, at one point, Gerold was one of the lovers of Arianne Martell. In A Feast for Crows, he allies himself with her when she attempts to crown Princess Myrcella Baratheon in place of her younger brother, King Tommen I Baratheon. Despite his beauty and valor, Gerold is a cruel man with angry eyes. He is jealous of his famous cousin, the late Sir Arthur Dayne, who was the Sword of the Morning. Darkstar, meanwhile, wields a longsword. When Arianne's party is intercepted by her father's captain of the household guard, Ariahota, Gerold agrees to surrender because they're outnumbered. But when Myrcella Baratheon's Kingsguard, Sir Aerys Oakheart, charges Areo, Gerold attempts to kill Myrcella amidst the fighting. Her horse rears and he succeeds only in slicing off her ear and scarring her face. Darkstar escapes Areo's guards by riding into the sands of Dorne. Edric Ned Dayne. Edric Dayne, also known as Ned, is the Lord of Starfall and head of House Dayne. According to A Storm of Swords, Edric is 12 years old. He is described in the book as having pale blonde hair and dark blue eyes that appear almost purple. He wears a pale purple cloak from the lilac color of the house sigil. He is shy and good-natured and very polite. When Edric was 7, his aunt Illyria was betrothed to Lord Beric Dondarrion, and Edric went to Blackhaven with Beric to serve as his page. Beric raised Edric to squire when he turned 10, and according to A Storm of Swords, he once won a prize riding at rings. In A Clash of Kings, Edric continues to squire for the revived Lord Beric, who establishes the Brotherhood without banners. When Arya Stark is taken by the Brotherhood, Ned attempts to befriend Arya, though she is wary and unnerved by the fact that his name is the same as her late father's. Green Grace. Galaza Galari is the Green Grace, the High Priestess of the Giscari Temple of the Graces in Meereen. Despite being near 80 years old, according to A Dance with Dragons, Galaza Galari is a tall, graceful-looking woman. She is described as having white hair and parchment-thin skin, but the years have not dimmed her piercing green eyes. Daenerys Targaryen thinks they are sad eyes, full of wisdom. Galaza Galari acts as an advisor to Queen Daenerys Targaryen while she is reigning in Meereen. She wears a shimmering green silk veil that covers her whole face except for her eyes, and she has a soft and kindly voice. Galaza is the one who suggests that Daenerys marry Hisdar zo Lorak to achieve the peace she desires and also reopen the fighting pits. And when Sir Barristan Selmy seizes Meereen upon Dany's disappearance, she offers him some terrible counsel. She tells him that Daenerys is dead and that he should let her dragons die as well. While we don't have a description of her clothing, it says in A Dance with Dragons that the color of the robes of the Graces indicates the role that they fulfill. It is likely that Galaza Galari wears the attire of the Meereenese known as the Giscari Tokar, or a variation of it. The Tokar is a loose, shapeless sheet, much like an Indian sari. Moqorro. Moqorro is a red priest from the Temple of the Lord of Light in Volantis. He speaks the common tongue well, with only a hint of an accent. Like Melisandre, Moqorro claims to see the future in the flames, though his predictions appear to be more accurate. In A Dance with Dragons, Moqorro's skin is described as black as pitch and darker than coal or jet. He is over 6 feet tall with a belly like a boulder. He has a tangle of pure white hair which grows from his face like a mane of a lion. Moqorro wears scarlet robes with sleeves, collar, and hems embroidered with orange satin flames. He carries an iron staff as tall as he is, with the dragon's head that spits crackling green flame when brought down. According to Tyrion Lannister, Moqorro has yellow and orange flame tattoos inked across his cheeks and forehead. Victarion Greyjoy describes Moqorro in A Dance with Dragons as a ragged red priest, and his flame tattoos are red and orange. When Moqorro is lost overboard during the storm in a voyage to Qarth, he is discovered 10 days later clinging to wreckage in the sea. With his red garb ruined, Victarion has new robes made for him from the black and gold of the Greyjoy sails. Strong Belwas. Strong Belwas is a tanned eunuch colossus and one of Daenerys Targaryen's Queen's Guards. He is a veteran pit fighter who earned a reputation at the fighting pits of Meereen, according to A Clash of Kings, and who was a slave bred and trained in Meereen. Belwas's skin is not brown. He has gapped teeth, a gleaming bald head, the smooth cheeks of a eunuch, a huge chest, and a massive belly, and Daenerys Targaryen compares his arms to tree trunks. Belwas is 3 times the size of Daenerys. She originally estimates Belwas to weigh 20 stone and later 15 stone or 210 pounds. Belwas wears baggy pants, a yellow silk belly band, and a tiny leather vest with iron studs. This leaves his upper torso mostly bare, making visible pale old scars in his arms, chest, and belly. He is armed with a curved arak and a small shield the size of a pie plate, which he holds with his hand rather than strapped to his forearm like a knight. Strong Belwas claims to have never lost a fight. His signature move is to allow each opponent to cut him once, then to go on the offensive and kill them. He is proud of his scars, pointing that Daenerys can count them to find out how many opponents he has actually slain. Patchface. Patchface, also nicknamed Patches, is employed as the court fool and jester at Dragonstone, spending most of his time with Shireen Baratheon, Lord Stannis' daughter. His face is tattooed in a checkered pattern. Patchface takes his name from the tattoos covering his broad face and bald head, marked in a pattern of green and red squares. This is the fashion in the free city of Volantis for slaves who serve as jesters. According to A Clash of Kings, Patchface wears a mock helmet fashioned from an old tin bucket, with a rack of deer antlers strapped to the crown and hung with cowbells. In A Dance with Dragons, Patchface receives a motley cloak of beaver pelts, sheepskins, and rabbit fur. Historically speaking, between the 14th and 17th centuries in England, motley, which was referring to a woolen fabric of mixed colors, was the characteristic dress of the professional fool, and has the important purpose of keeping the fool outside the social hierarchy and therefore not subject to class distinction. The obese fool is described as dough-soft and slump-shouldered. Patchface has lost his memory and much of his wits because of an ordeal whereby he survived a shipwreck at sea, killing everyone on board, including Stannis Baratheon's parents. He washed up among the dead 3 days later. As a result, the fool suffers from twitches and trembles, and he is often incoherent. He has an unusual sideway walk, and some consider him a simpleton. Some of Patchface's rhymes seem to be of a prophetic nature, though none of his listeners understand them. Believing him dangerous, Melisandre tells Jon Snow in A Clash of Kings, "Many a time I have glimpsed him in my flames. Sometimes there are skulls about him, and his lips are red with blood." Jon Connington. Jon Connington, also known as Griff, was the Lord of Griffin's Roost, the head of House Connington. Jon served as a squire in King's Landing, first alongside Prince Rhaegar Targaryen and later for the Crown Prince. According to A Dance with Dragons, in his youth, Jon's hair and beard were fiery red. Nearing 40, Jon is clean-shaven with a lined, leathery face. He has crow's feet at the corners of his pale blue eyes. During a time when his father was still alive, Rhaegar visited Griffin's Roost upon returning from a trip to Dorne and visited the tallest tower of the castle with Jon. It is implied in A Dance with Dragons that Jon was in love with Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. Jon refers to Rhaegar as his Silver Prince when he reminisces about him. George R.R. Martin possibly confirmed this in an interview, stating that one of the POV characters in A Dance with Dragons is gay. During Robert's Rebellion, the Mad King Aerys II Targaryen named Jon Connington his Hand of the King. But King Aerys held Jon responsible for his defeat at Stony Sept and exiled him, stripping him of his titles and passing the rule of Griffin's Roost to Sir Ronald Connington. According to George Martin, once on the Iron Throne, King Robert was not willing to recall Jon from exile since he had been among Rhaegar's closest friends. The World Book stated that the exiled Jon joined the Golden Company, a company of sellswords founded by Sir Aegon Rivers, also known as Bittersteel. In an effort to remove Jon from the Golden Company so that he might raise Rhaegar's surviving son, Aegon Targaryen, Varys arranged a plan to make it appear that Jon is disgraced and has drunk himself to death. In A Dance of Dragons, it's stated that Jon Connington has dyed his hair blue, although his eyebrows are still red and his red roots show. He goes under the name Griff and has been raising his claimed son, young Griff, secretly Prince Aegon. While pretending to be Griff, Jon prefers to wear a red wolfskin cloak. Jon later contracts grayscale while rescuing Tyrion, who is knocked overboard after an attack by stone men, but he keeps it a secret for fear he would be left to die. He hopes to live long enough to see Aegon on the Iron Throne. Young Griff, false Aegon. Young Griff is the secret identity of Aegon Targaryen, nephew to Daenerys Targaryen and the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Elia Martell. According to George and the World Book, Aegon looked like a Targaryen, taking after his father Rhaegar. It's stated in A Dance with Dragons that as an infant, he had fair hair and has dark blue, almost purple eyes. In Tyrion's POV chapter in A Dance with Dragons, after some time on the old ramshackle boat the Shy Maid, Tyrion concludes that young Griff is not Jon Connington's son at all, but instead Aegon Targaryen. The story goes that Varys took custody of the real Prince Aegon after swapping out the child for a tanner's infant son. According to George R.R. Martin, young Griff fits the description of a Targaryen, specifically Aegon, with his purple eyes and silver blonde hair that he dyes blue. Tyrion's thoughts of his appearance are that this beardless boy could have any maiden in the Seven Kingdoms, blue hair or no. Those eyes of his would melt them. In A Dance with Dragons, Aegon's company travels to a town in Essos, where he and Jon Connington head toward the camp of the Golden Company. Wearing the colors of House Targaryen, Aegon is introduced by Jon as Aegon VI, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men. When news of Aegon's survival reaches King's Landing, the small council of King Tommen declare him to be a pretender. Myranda Royce. Myranda Royce, called Randa, is the daughter of Lord Nestor Royce, the High Steward of the Vale. House Royce and the Gates of the Moon sigil consists of a black portcullis over a white crescent moon on purple with rune symbols on a bronze border. As described in A Feast of Crows, Myranda is short and fleshy and buxom. She has a small mouth, brown eyes, and brown curly hair. She is also clever, playful, but also known to gossip. She is good friends with Maya Stone, one of her father's retainers. Myranda maintains the Gates of the Moon for her father, Lord Nestor Royce. She was once married to an elderly lord who died during sex with her. Her father tried to marry her to the handsome squire Harold Harding, but the arrangement was rebuffed by his guardian Lady Anya Wainwood. Elaine Stone, who is actually Sansa Stark in disguise as Peter Baelish's bastard daughter, recalls in A Feast for Crows. "Soon or late, you must meet Myranda Royce," Peter had warned her. "When you do, be careful. She likes to play the merry fool, but underneath, she's shrewder than her father. Guard your tongue around her." Victarion Greyjoy. Victarion Greyjoy is a member of House Greyjoy and is a younger brother of Balon Greyjoy, Lord of the Iron Islands. He is the Lord Captain of the Iron Fleet, and his flagship is the Iron Victory. Victarion is a large and powerful man with a bull's broad chest and a boy's flat stomach. His hair is flecked with gray. Theon Greyjoy considers his uncle to be an old man. Victarion is a capable commander and a fierce warrior in battle, and he has a calm demeanor outside of it, thinking of enemies who show bravery with great respect. He is a religious man willing to wear plate armor while sailing because he has no fear of drowning. George Martin said in interviews that Victarion is dumb as a stump and a dullard and a brute. In A Feast for Crows, it stated that Victarion wears heavy gray chainmail over boiled black leather or cuir bouilli. He wears mail and leather day and night for protection from Connington. I will add that in my own assessment, it would be an odd choice for Victarion to wear boiled leather under his mail, since in the Middle Ages, cuir bouilli was actually a stiffened and molded piece that was made from vegetable tan leather, meant as a cheaper and lighter alternative to plate armor. It's likelier, in my opinion, that he would wear a gambeson or buff coat under his mail instead. When preparing for combat, he also wears a heavy plate armor with padded gloves underneath his iron gauntlets of lobstered steel plate, which is a type of segmented armor that is riveted together. And Victarion's tall black war helmet is decorated with an iron kraken, the tentacles of which coil down below his jaw. The kraken, a cephalopod-like sea monster of gigantic size, is taken from the sigil of House Greyjoy of a golden kraken on a black field. Victarion's cloak or mantle, as mentioned in A Feast for Crows, is made of 9 layers of golden cloth sewn like the kraken, and its arms reach his boots. Victarion carries a longsword and a dirk, but he prefers to use his fearsome steel axe with a shield. During a battle in A Feast for Crows, fighting on behalf of his brother Euron, Victarion's left hand is wounded during the fight. His wounded hand continues to trouble him in A Dance with Dragons, and he suspects that he is being poisoned. The Red Priest Moqorro apparently uses magic whereby his left hand is left charred and blackened. Genna Lannister. Lady Genna Lannister is the only daughter of Lord Tytos Lannister and Lady Jeyne Marbrand. As the aunt of Jaime, Cersei, and Tyrion Lannister, Genna took on a maternal role for them after Lady Joanna Lannister's death, and is one of the few Lannisters who recognizes Tyrion's talents for political maneuvering. Genna has 2 older brothers, Tywin and Kevin, and would later have 2 younger brothers, Tygot and Gerion. At the young age of 7, Genna was betrothed to Sir Aemon Frey, Lord Walder's second son. Genna loved Tywin for having been the only person to speak out against her betrothal. The betrothal to Aemon, however, remained standing, and they went on to have 4 children. According to A Feast for Crows, in her youth, Genna was shapely, always threatening to overflow her bodice. However, as she aged, she became fat. She now has a square figure and an enormous bosom with a broad and smooth face. She is also intelligent and shrewd. She bosses around her husband, Sir Aemon Frey, whom she considers inept. Her personality is such that she is able to claim a place in Sir Jaime Lannister's war council without opposition, which is uncommon for a woman. Lady Stoneheart. Lady Stoneheart is a revived Lady Catelyn Stark, possessing none of the empathetic or forgiving qualities Catelyn Stark did in her first life. Because Catelyn's throat had been brutally slit when she was murdered at the Red Wedding, she can barely speak. In A Feast for Crows, a cloaked and hooded woman is spoken of in the vicinity of Fairmarket and Hagsmire, but she vanished into the neck when pursued by Blackwalder Frey. Thoros of Myr tells Brienne that the Freys slashed her throat from ear to ear. When we found her by the river, she was 3 days dead. Harwin begged me to give her the kiss of life, but it had been too long. I would not do it, so Lord Beric put his lips to hers instead, and the flame of life passed from him to her. And she rose. May the Lord of Light protect us. She rose. Merritt Frey described Lady Stoneheart in A Storm of Swords like this. Her cloak and collar hid the gash his brother's blade had made, but her face was even worse than he remembered. The flesh had gone pudding soft in the water and turned the color of curdled milk. Half her hair was gone and the rest had turned as white and as brittle as a crone's. Beneath her ravaged scalp, her face was shredded skin and black blood where she had raked herself with her nails. But her eyes were the most terrible thing. Her eyes saw him and they hated. Lady Stoneheart's wounds have not healed. Her face is shredded, hanging in ragged strips from her eyes to her jaw, either crusted with dried blood or gaping open to reveal the skull beneath. Her throat is still slit open. Lem Lemoncloak tells Merritt, "She don't speak. You bloody bastards cut her throat too deep for that." But she remembers. Lady Stoneheart is merciless in her quest for revenge, slaughtering anybody who had any association with those who were responsible for the Red Wedding, in which she and her son Robb were betrayed and murdered. Lady Barbrey Dustin. Barbrey Dustin is the Lady of Barrowtown as the widow of Lord William Dustin. She was born into House Ryswell as the younger daughter of Lord Roderick Ryswell. Barbrey is tall, unbent, and handsome. She has wrinkles around her mouth and eyes, and her hair is equal parts brown and gray. She wears her hair tied behind her head in a widow's knot. She usually dresses all in black, her gowns with a high, stiff collar. Barbrey sometimes accentuates her attire with vair, which is a kind of fur common in the Middle Ages, and it's made from pieces of grayish-blue backs of squirrels, which are sewn together with pieces of the animal's white underbellies. Vair is the second most common fur in heraldry, after ermine. Barbrey's personal sigil quarters the spiked crown and the crossed long axes of House Dustin with the golden horse head of her father, Lord Roderick Ryswell. Infatuated with the heir to Winterfell, Brandon Stark, a young Barbrey lost her virginity to him. Lord Roderick hoped to wed his daughter to Brandon, but Lord Rickard arranged that Brandon marry Catelyn Tully of Riverrun. Barbrey, however, claims that Brandon did not want to wed Catelyn and that the betrothal was the idea of Wallace, Rickard's maester at Winterfell. While Lady Dustin appears to be loyal to House Bolton, she bears a grudge against House Frey due to the fact that several of her own men were killed at the Red Wedding. Jeyne Poole. Jeyne Poole is a member of House Poole and is the daughter of the steward of Winterfell, Vaon Poole. Jeyne is an attractive girl with brown eyes, dark hair, and pretty white teeth. She is skinny and has a small bosom. According to Game of Thrones, Jeyne is the best friend of Sansa Stark. She mocks Sansa's sister, however, as Arya Horseface, smirking and neighing when the younger girl is near. Jeyne is also fond of Sansa's brother Robb Stark and enjoys lemon cakes. In Jaime's POV chapter in A Storm of Swords, she is described as hollow-eyed and skinny, wears a gray dress and a gray cloak with white satin trim. Jaime thinks the girl's long brown hair blew wild in the wind. She had a pretty face, he thought, but her eyes were sad and weary. In disguise as Arya Stark, Jeyne accompanies the host of Lord Roose Bolton from the Twins to Siege of Moat Cailin, where she meets her groom Ramsay Bolton. Theon Greyjoy, a captive of Ramsay, recognizes Jeyne as he grew up alongside her at Winterfell. Jeyne spends all of her time confined to a tower of Winterfell after her wedding to Ramsay, and she is deeply traumatized by the things that Ramsay does to her. The maids who bathe her notice bruises on her body, and the girl's sobbing is known throughout Winterfell. Theon sometimes brings her hot water for her baths. According to Lady Dustin, the crying of Arya Stark is more a danger than the army of Stannis Baratheon. Theon thinks that Barbrey is suspicious of Arya's identity. In A Dance of Dragons, Theon rescues Jeyne by jumping from the battlements of Winterfell. Jeyne breaks several ribs, however, as Theon lands on top of her. Jeyne and Theon are discovered by Mors Umber, who has Tycho Nestoris of the Iron Bank bring the escapees to Stannis' camp in the Crofters' village. Jeyne suffers from frostbite on her nose. Jeyne's story was replaced in the show with Sansa's wedding to Ramsay. We're almost done! Thank you to my co-producers Tatiana, Vanessa, and to all of the talented artists that helped make this video possible. Also, thank you to my patrons on Patreon. We have just one video left to go in the series. In the next episode, we'll look at some of the book characters that are different in the show. Thank you for spending time with us. We'll see you in the next video.